Welcome to Bamfordrose, and it's another question of the week. Well, as the title in the thumbnail suggests, will my Aston Martin run on wine and cheese? Well, one answer to that is that the car will run on whatever fuel in the tank gives the most amount of power, because that's all that we're interested in. But as many of you will know, unless you've been on the moon or had your face glued to the M25, this story concerns Prince Charles and his wonderful DB6, which he had given to him as a 21st birthday present from the Queen. Obviously feeling a bit guilty that his luxury sports car was doing 13 miles to the gallon in standard trim has obviously prompted him into setting a standard, being a beacon and appearing to be jolly well green by declaring that his Aston Martin was now powered by bioethanol fuel, which is derived from waste wine and fermented whey collected from the cheese making process. Do a bit of digging into the story and it appears that Gloucester-based Green Fuels and renowned independent specialists in the heritage world RS Williams worked together to create the DB6, which is converted to run on bioethanol or E85 fuel. So that's 85% bioethanol fuel, 15% gasoline. Now, I think the statement that it's running on surplus wine and whey products from the cheese making process is a bit headline catching, because in reality I think that car is just running regular E85 fuel that's been available in USA, Brazil for many years. Currently 90% of global ethanol fuel is made from the fermentation of crops, and 10% comes from the hydration of ethene. For the fermentation route, crops used are typically barley, rice, wheat, corn, or any crop with large quantities of sugar volume or starch. Once harvested, yeast and bacteria feed on the crop, produces the ethanol, which in turn, during that process, creates tremendous amounts of carbon dioxide. Now, there's plenty of studies done well to wheel to understand what the impact of refining oil and the cost per mile of gasoline is. But it's very difficult to find the crop, the field to wheel calculations, because they don't really want you to know that info. The cultivation, farming, shipping, refining of the crop to make bioethanol produces copious amounts of greenhouse gases. I read one report where the crop or grain needed to fill one 95-litre tank was more than an average human consumes in grain or wheat for over a year. A USA study in 2014 showed that the production of 13 billion gallons of ethanol took available food crops away from 500 million people, which is the population of the entire Western Hemisphere outside of the US. In recent years, that explosion to farm crops for ethanol has resulted in huge price increases of milk, cheese, eggs, corn-based sweeteners and cereals. But the legislators and powers that be can do whatever they wish to produce whatever fuel they wish. As long as it produces the most amount of power in my internal combustion engine, then that's fine with me. So in interviews, Prince Charles has commented on many occasions that the DB6 actually goes better on the bioethanol fuel. Well, that's of absolutely no surprise. The comment is often used derogatory to make regular gasoline look old hat compared to bioethanol. I've done calibration and mapping for R&D into production on several engines on ethanol, so I'm quite familiar with the benefits of the fuel. Let's take a closer look at the DB6. It's a 4-litre naturally aspirated straight 6 engine, 282 bhp at 5,500 rpm. That equals 70 brake horsepower per litre, so we can tell that it's a bit of a plodder, doesn't rev very high, but it's got an incredibly low compression ratio at 8.9 to 1. Now we don't know if 8.9 to 1 was set because the engine detonates. So if the compression ratio was increased, then the ignition would detonate out of control, so it's limited to a low compression ratio. So it doesn't take too much thinking to figure out if you use a higher octane fuel, you can perhaps increase the compression ratio, increase the ignition and get more power out of it, which, hey presto, is probably exactly what they've done. So therefore it's no surprise that the DB6 runs better on the higher octane bioethanol fuel. So the fact that the engine runs better and performs higher power output on the bioethanol fuel is a factor of the compression ratio, the ignition advance angle, and the octane rating of the fuel, and not anything to do with the green credentials of the fuel. Now, if that DB6 is standard, it's got a 72 litre tank, which is 15.8 gallons. It guzzles 13 miles to the gallon, which is about 200 miles per tank. When it's got a full tank of bioethanol fuel at E85, that tank range is going to drop down to about 145, and it will guzzle to the rate of about 11 miles to the gallon. They don't tell you that, do they? Obviously, it's a bit of a environmentalist's marketing stunt, because us mere mortals can't go to Tesco's and get E85 that's been made out of surplus wine and whey from the cheese making process. From what I can gather, this goes back to about 2008. When there was an excess of wine which was of such poor quality it couldn't be exported. Green Fuels bought 8,000 litres of this stuff for £1 per litre. They boiled off and condensed the alcohol element and topped that up with the fermented whey from the cheese making process. Now we can't find out any more figures than that, but I reckon that would have given them 1,000 litres of E85 bioethanol fuel, which since 2008 would equate to 7 tanks full of fuel, which equates to about 1,000 road miles, all at the taxpayer's expense. Who knows if the process of shipping that 8,000 litres of wine around, boiling it to death to get your 11% alcohol out of it, refining, mixing with the whey, adding 15% gasoline to it, shipping those barrels across the country to wherever that car is, because it's going to need to be followed by a barrel in a trailer because it's only going to do 140 odd miles for a full tank. Whether that actually worked out any better for the environment as a net end outcome than putting 1,000 litres of super unleaded in it. So no, your own Aston Martin will not run on surplus wine and cheese. What I don't like about this is that the best aspects of running on bioethanol, the higher octane fuel, has been used to say that the engine runs better and it's more powerful, and we're led to believe that that whole process was more greener than going to Tesco and filling up with super, and that's used as a beacon to persuade us mere mortals that 10% ethanol in our fuel, when we can't really optimise for that 10% because the Aston isn't flex fuel, meaning we're going to get less tank range, less power, at greater cost because you don't get a discount for that 10% blend, ethanol blend that's in your fuel, is acceptable to us. What I do like about bioethanol fuel is the higher octane content of the fuel. If we're able to optimise for that particular octane rate in that fuel grade, then it's going to mean higher power output. But unfortunately, because of the less efficient burn, you are going to get about 30% less tank range out of it. I've already had one customer phone up who regularly used his DB9 in the UK, only filled with fuel with no ethanol, was a super critical owner and measured each tank range, kept an eye on MPG. After years of doing that, he's now taken his car to mainland Europe where it went for a service. He then starts to use it in a market in a territory unbeknown to him that is only 10% ethanol, no matter what grade of fuel you use, regular or premium. He's done a couple of tanks of fuel and realised that he is short on the tank range compared to his previous usage. He phoned me up thinking that the franchise dealer who'd serviced the car has performed some sort of mistake, made an error. and because of that, his car is now guzzling more fuel. When he told me the numbers he was getting in the European market compared to the UK, I quickly worked out that that was precisely a 30% down. When the tank range on the Aston isn't that great to start with, then a 30% reduction is really noticeable. Hope you liked that question of the week, and unfortunately we won't be running any cars of our own anytime soon on Waste, Wine and G's. Click us a like, give us your comments on this week's question of the week, and we'll see you on the next one.